Okay, today we're going to talk about a little essay. That's one of my, maybe I shouldn't say it's one of my very favorite readings, but I really enjoy Frederic Bastiat. Bastiat is probably the right French way to say it. I've said it Bastiat for so long, I kind of default to that. He was a French economist in the 1800s, and he's been translated into pretty modern English. It's really a pretty easy read. And there's a couple essays in particular that are my very favorites. Today we're going to talk about one of them. It's called What is Seen and What is Not Seen. There's a couple different ways that title is translated, but if you put those in, and we've got a link for you here, that's the common title. Both of the essays that we're going to talk about with Bastiat, well, and others, most of my favorites come from, if you want to get the book, it's selected essays on political economy. He also has economic sophisms and economic harmonies, I think, are also other collections of his essays. There's a great author review on him, so make sure and watch that. But this What is Seen, What is Not Seen is so clever. Here's what the title means. There's only one difference between a bad economist and a good one. The bad economist confines himself to the visible effect. The good economist takes into account both the effect that can be seen and those effects that must be foreseen. So it's an economics essay, but it's really about human nature, and it's about how people think and how they act in the everyday world. And it's really about personal finance. You can learn a lot about personal finance. And one of my favorite things that Bastiat does in this essay is that he shows us the harmony in the principles. So it's divided up into little mini sections, and all of them are really great. And Bastiat is fun to read too because he's kind of sarcastic. And because he lived in France in the mid-1800s, and they had gone through a whole bunch of revolutions, and they were really limping along, and he saw all this government intervention in the economy, which the parallel today is really fascinating, and that's one of the reasons why people really enjoy reading him, is because he speaks to modern America, like all this government intervention in the economy. And so he's, what he says in one specific segment, which I think is my very favorite of any of his writings, and that is when he talks about savings, and he says, lots of people say to spur the economy you've got to spend, but that's not true. Actually, it's through saving, and he shows how that's the case. He does a beautiful job of demonstrating it. And then he says, what is so wonderful here is that we don't have to, he says, it is not without actual physical pain that I see contradictions which appear between the great laws of nature. If mankind were reduced between choosing the two sides, one of which hurts his interest and the other its conscience, we should have to despair for its future. In other words, if the laws of nature were contrary to our conscience, and if our common sense didn't agree with what was best for us, then he says we would have to despair. But what he demonstrates is that actually they harmonize. There's economic as well as moral superiority. We need only understand this consoling axiom, which is not the less true for having a paradoxical appearance: to save is to spend. And he's shown that through what he's written, that saving is spending, and it's spending at a more, and it's spending that actually builds an economy versus spending before you save. Anyway, it's really cool, the paradox that he shows. He does an incredible job. Anyway, I just can't say enough about it. That's one of my favorite parts, is that he shows that personal finance and national economics must harmonize. If they don't harmonize, then they would be opposed to each other, in which case either society would thrive or the individual would thrive. And what he's showing is, no, they thrive together. The principles that govern personal finance are the same principles that govern the economics of a society or of a nation, and therefore they have to be honored at both levels. So he's really wonderful. I had a man in he's part of the the Austrian School of Economics, which is not taught in a lot of almost all American schools. And I've had individuals in our book groups who have been very upset, had a man with a master's degree in economics, and he was never introduced to the Austrian school. And so he was very, very angry that that was left out of the picture. But this is Austrian School of Economics, which is my favorite school of economics, and he's part of that tradition. Anyway, what is seen, what is not seen? You can click on it here and go ahead and read it. It's not real long, 40 pages at the very most, and the concepts are a little deeper, but not super hard, and so they're a great discussion piece and wonderful for book groups. And they're good to read in a month because you can go back and review, you can go really slow, you can take lots of notes because it's such a short reading, but it's meaty. And especially if you're comparing it to current events, there's a lot to talk about. So Bastiat, What is Seen, What is Not Seen. Enjoy. It's a really, really entertaining reading on economics, ironically enough. See you next time.